blast off.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the Town of Eastchester Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for April. Today is Tuesday, April 11, 2023. We begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Okay, while everyone gets settled in, I just usually take this opportunity to go over some of the ground rules. So, number one, the meeting is conducted under Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Order, which just about every other governmental and quasi-governmental agency utilizes. A couple of highlights. Number one, generally we take action on motion and vote and resolution. And the public, when public hearing is open, will generally have an opportunity to speak when recognized by the chair. A second item under our ground rules, particularly because it gotten confusing under COVID and the Zoom meetings, new correspondence is not accepted after the close of a public hearing. So between prior and during the public hearing, yes, no new correspondence after a public hearing. Also, our calendar is printed well in advance, usually the year prior, and we meet once a month, generally the second Tuesday of the month. I mention this because, believe it or not, we're running short on meetings until the summer break. So if anyone here or listening public is contemplating an application, because applications as part of the terms and condition of your application is not decided upon when first time heard, if you're considering an application, you want to check the calendar because there's a meeting in May and June, and then there's a summer break. So anyway, just to mention that for the public. Now, we have no new items on the agenda for tonight, so I don't need to go over those ground rules. We have one adjourned application, which is 2304 28 Reynolds Place. And on our calendar tonight is one matter for resolution and one matter that was adjourned and is back on for tonight. So let's start with our calendar, and I make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 14th meeting. Is there a second to my motion? Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, as far as resolution calendar, our only item on tonight is which is number one, is 23-11, that's 16 Knox Road. So I make a motion to approve application 23-11, 16 Knox Road. Is there a second?
Second that.
Mr. Cahalan, to the vote. Mr. Cahalan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. The application has been approved 5-0. Okay. The one item on tonight, which is an old business item, is application 23-09. This is 59 Overlook Avenue. You can put your display up and you can state your name and address for the record. And before you proceed, just want to remind the public that this is an application and there's a modification to the application. So prior to moving to open the public hearing, I'd like the applicant, among other things, just to explain what the modification to the initial application was. So please proceed.
Sure. Good evening, board members. Adamo Maiorano from Community Designs and Engineering. We are proposing additions and alterations to 59 Overlook Avenue. So to pick up where we left off at the last meeting, we came back to the board to take a second look at the proposed garage addition as it relates to the front yard setback. So what we did was try to decrease the size of the garage as much as physically possible in order to increase the ask for the deficiency of the front yard setback. This property is a corner lot, so the front of the house as it faces Overlook, the actual front yard setback is on Ridge Street. So in doing so, we submitted additional items from the last meeting. So the additional items were one, just a cleaned up copy of vicinity front yard setbacks. So again, being that it's a corner lot, there are other properties in the vicinity of this property that share very similar characteristics with respect to existing nonconformity and front yard setbacks, given that they're actually really two-story additions, but those additions protrude into the front yard setback very much like ours does, with very similar front yard setbacks. Basically, the numbers as it relates to the R5 zoning district, board required 30 feet in the front yard, and our ask is that our proposed garage is 19 foot 5 inches. Additionally, not just the corner properties, but as you go up and down the street on the immediate property that, where we're located, other homes are also existing non-conforming and share very similar characteristics of the front yard setbacks that we are proposing, again, that, call it 19 and a half feet. The property across the street is the same. It's a two-story structure that is 19 foot 6 inch front yard setback, and other homes as well on that immediate street, again, share those similar characteristics. So that's basically in that map provided, the front yard setbacks. Secondly, we had a complete landscape plan done by Bob Tramontano, the landscape architect. Basically, what he did was carefully select mature plants, trees, and flowering shrubs around the garage to, one, help, screen the garage, but most importantly, give the garage a visual impact that, it was, meant to be there, and that it wasn't just an afterthought. Meticulously planting of plants and shrubs in order to create that consistency of the garage, being that it should, be located there, and again, similar planting of other neighboring residents. The only two different scenarios, there was two different scenarios of the landscape plan, L1 and L2. The only difference is there's an existing, let's say, 14 plus or minus high evergreens in the rear of the residence. One plan has those evergreens extending to the corner of the garage, and the other one does not. The owner is open to both of them. I just think extending the evergreens will create more of a shade impact to the neighboring residents, so probably keeping those evergreens on the property line the way they are, one is probably the most ideal approach, and also, the most aesthetic approach, because there already is a small evergreen shrub that, basically borders the properties behind us. Let me just go to so these elevations sort of show in real life what, not the actual plant, what the plantings sort of look like, and how it kind of helps screen a little bit of that garage and creates more of that consistency. One shows the tall evergreens on the property line. The other one is just some additional planting that's right behind the garage, but, no change to the planting on the property line. Then lastly, what we did do to try to help give the board a little more, again, of the visual impact of, in real life, what this garage would look like. We put 2 stakes in the ground, sort of 2x4 standing up, so when visiting the site, you could really see in true life, how much the garage extends into this front yard setback, and how it relates to up and down the street and the neighboring residences. In that picture, it's a little hard to see in the picture, but obviously in real life, if you went by there, you could sort of visualize and see that.
Thank you, Mr. Maiorano. Okay, at this time, I usually reserve an opportunity for the board to ask any questions, particularly to the amendment and modification of the application. Mr. Cahalan, anything?
I have none.
Mr. Miller? None. Mr. Nerzia?
No questions or
Mr.
comments.
DeMarco?
Nothing.
I don't have anything at this time. I make a motion to open the public hearing on this matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Would anyone like to be heard on this application? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and proceed. If you have a visual aid, yes, please add it here. Thank you.
My name is Silvio Luca.
Yeah, if you don't mind, on the mic, so the stenographer could get the, for the minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Silvio Luca. I live at 33 Ridge Street, which is the adjacent house to this addition in question. Couple of things pertaining to me personally. Well, let's talk about the setback requirements, front setback requirements. All the homes in the neighborhood that the architect is talking about, that the setback requirement is less than 30 feet, were all built between 1898 and the early 40s, when the zoning board, the zoning resolutions and the zoning setbacks were quite different. So building something now to meet something that was built 50 to 100 years ago, I don't think is correct. There's a reason why we have setback requirements, in order to everybody to have green space, visual ties to the neighborhood, and so forth. Pertaining to my home in question, the garage is an afterthought, in my opinion, only because in the rear yard, if you call it the rear yard, the architect is proposing a 27-foot, two-story addition, so which is almost to the setback requirement. I think it's 30 feet. They have 36 feet. So there's no other place to put a garage other than a front setback. Secondly, when we're talking about landscaping, the point that I'm trying to make is this new addition that, as of right, they're allowed to do is going to basically shadow my yard. And I have a pool in my backyard as well. They're allowed to do that. I'm not happy about that, but I can't really argue that. But because the way that's designed and the size of it, sheer size of it, is the only place to put a garage is in a non-conforming front setback. Secondly, if they plant landscaping, that doesn't help my situation because I'm trying to have a view out of my sunroom in front of my house, which basically now I will be staring at the back of a garage or 14-foot evergreens, which again is not neighborly, if I have to use that word. And I want to, a visual, this is my sunroom in question. This is the view, and I'm not standing straight at the window. If I stand straight at the window, 90 degrees, I'll completely block the view. I'm standing on an angle in my sunroom, and basically that's my view, and with the garage, that's my view. And again, I'm not standing straight onto it. And basically this is the architect's floor plan. This is the addition, the rear addition that they're doing. And basically there's really no other place to put a garage unless there's a redesign. So they chose to put it in a front setback requirement. And again, all these non-conforming setbacks are old homes, my house included. My house was built in 1928. My front setback, I think, is 25. The house next to me is similar. The house across the street, 1898. That's why it's 19.85 feet, because it's, there was probably, maybe back then, there was not even a zoning setback requirement. And houses up the block, there's one, I think, that has 15 feet. Again, it was built in 1912. So there's a reason why homes have that setback non-conforming. It's not that it was an afterthought or built after the fact, like in the newer zoning regulations. Maybe one or two, but not most of the ones that the architect mentioned at the last meeting. That's all I can say.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Would anyone else like to be heard on this application? Okay. Would the applicant like to reply to the public? Would you like to reply?
Yeah, nothing that we have further other than just, the additional information to try to show that the consistency in the neighborhood is, sort of maintained. I mean, the only thing really that jumps out is across the street, they did, get a variance for their addition. I think it was in the late 90s or early 2000. It's a two-story structure that they did a bunch of modifications and renovations, and that was the one that has 19.5-foot setback. But yes, there are existing non-conforming homes that were built a long time ago, and then other ones in the area that have been extended and have corner conditions that the home protrudes into the front yard setback. Most of those are really 2 stories. Ours, at least, is a 1-story, so I guess a little lesser visual impact of a main structure going into that front yard setback.
Okay. Well, before the board makes any comments, let me see if anyone has any questions. Mr. DeMarco?
No questions.
Mr. Nerzia?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Actually, it's more from Lucas. I'm just looking at Sylvia's rendition where you put the paper down. If I understand correctly, if the applicant wanted, they could run evergreens all the way out. Is that, am I understanding correctly?
Right, there could be evergreens, well, as Adama was explaining, there's a hedge, or a row of hedges, but there could be evergreens placed in that location to screen more of the height of the building.
No, but just, could they run the evergreens all the way out to the
property
street, to the
line.
property line if they wanted?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I was right, yes, as I was mentioning.
If you don't mind, into the mic, just so we get it of record.
So, yeah. So as of right, yes, they can run evergreens, call it, 6, 7 foot, 8 foot height, 10-foot height, along that property line. Again, we don't want to do that because aesthetically, there are actually, on the other property, there is existing pines that have that similar condition. They're very tall pines that run almost to the street line, I think past the property line, but aesthetically, obviously, for the neighbors' well-being, we don't want to do that, but then aesthetically, that's not, ideally what you want to do too with tall shrubs. But as of right, yes.
Anything further?
No.
Mr. Cahalan?
Nothing.
I don't have any questions. So I make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor? Aye. Okay, to the board. Any comments, Mr. Cahalan?
None.
Mr. Miller?
No comments.
Mr. Nerzia?
No.
Mr. DeMarco?
No.
I've reviewed the application and your submission and the modifications, and its conformity with more of the neighborhood than certainly the first application did in terms of the character of the neighborhood. So I have nothing further. I'm going to adjourn this for resolution at the next meeting. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Galen, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. I have nothing left but to make a motion to adjourn the April ZBA meeting. Next meeting is on May 9th, 2023. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Mr. Miller, all in favor? Aye. Good night, thank you.
Had to get mentioned in the minutes, huh?